I started in the summer of 2013 at Westminster in the program Arts and Community Leadership. And by the end of my time, uh, I had decided that I wanted to focus on Black Social Change Utah.
So I'm the founder and director of Brawley Arts. I co-created a curriculum at Westminster College for the Masters of Community Leadership project. And my role was to teach a course that invited students to address a need using art and culture to solve it. I met Marion in 2013, and she immediately demonstrated she was a rock star. She was talk and action combined and vision. And we really hit it off. And we also had a class project that summer. It was called Justice for Some with a question mark. It was a Brawley Arts project. And Marion participated in this mock protest, which showed both sides of equations. And she showed her chops by being a narrator in that one. And I thought, all right, this one is dynamite. Fast forward, Marion asked me, would I be her capstone advisor? And we met somewhat regularly to discuss ideas, approaching what was working, what wasn't working within the school system. And one day I met Marion at a coffee shop, and I walked in and she was sitting down, and I just looked and I thought, here is this dynamic presence and something is very wrong. Her whole being, which is usually so full of life and energy, felt and looked somewhat deflated. And I thought, oh no, something has happened. And I sat down and these beautiful tired eyes looked at me, and I said, Marion, what's wrong? What happened? And so she shared with me some significant acts of discrimination that she had experienced in recent weeks. And she shared that how you get weary in the battle or weary in your work. And she looked at me and she said, how do you maintain hope in the face of adversity over and over and over again? And I feel like from that moment, something very special began, in that we understood we have lots of work to do, and we were in it together.
So she really saved my thesis and me from being without an ally, trying to negotiate a system that really didn't understand and wasn't really willing to figure out who I am and to work with me, the individual. And so that's how the beginnings of the project.
We talked about how important it was to capture the stories of change makers in Utah. Who are the Black change makers in Utah that maintain hope, come what may? And that was really, I think, the seed and the heart of Marion's capstone.
And so we spoke with people like France Davis and Daisy Eason, who was the first African-American and female mechanic at Hill Air Force Base, and sharing her story of persevering, of working against the odds.
And as these stories started, as she was collecting and recording these stories, it really struck me. I said, what if we go for it? Let's go for a performance. Let's go for a multidisciplinary performance.
We figured out that the idea is bigger than just the thesis, and that the project could be in keeping with what both of us are passionate about in terms of producing something on a stage and bringing the community in. And so that's how Black Social Change, the project, took root.
So we pulled together dancers, musicians, filmmakers, storytellers, and we presented Black Social Change Utah. We felt collectively that we would reach more people if we went for multidisciplinary expression, because it's like teaching. If you can't reach somebody by going through the front door, you've got to go down the chimney or through the back door or through a window. And at the end of the evening, we said, if you would like to stay and have a conversation, we thought maybe a few people will stay. Not a person left. And what really showed us is people are eager for this work, for the conversation, for the dialogue. We now have an opportunity. It's a way to give to the community, to interact with the community, make a change. Marion called me, I don't know, a year or so ago and said, Amy, we need to do this beloved community project. And she explained that Salt Lake Community College had a photography project, but there was a gap in sort of understanding what the beloved community concept is all about. So we got to work. And really the beloved community was started by Gandhi. And Dr. Martin Luther King embraced it and adapted it and used it to explain that it is possible for diverse people to live together harmoniously, equitably, and civilly, but it will take nonviolent social change to achieve that goal.
Hate and malice, but always fight with love, so that when the day comes that the walls of segregation have completely crumbled in Montgomery, that we will be able to live with people as their brothers and sisters.
And so we got to work. And what does that look like? What does that look like to achieve a diverse and equitable and harmonious society through nonviolent social change? So we had all this film footage from our previous endeavors with Black Social Change Utah, and we went to work with Twig Media Lab to capture what is going on in Utah to reflect global issues with local relevance. And this is in the aftermath of George Floyd. This is after the death of Representative John Lewis. This is Breonna Taylor. And all of a sudden, you can feel it as palpable. We have the world's and our state's consciousness is waking up. And we have an opportunity right now to have these conversations, to step in and engage with nonviolent social change, and to increase awareness around our place. In our film, through the storyteller's experience, so it is a small documentary that also articulates the history of the beloved community and possibilities for change. And the themes that really rose out of from our storytellers were resoundingly clear: education, mentorship, activism, voting, loving kindness.
My birthing process into the world began in 1861 on a slave block in
Georgia, just outside of Augusta, Georgia, during the days of separate but equal.
Daddy Thomas was in the lumber business, and he had 133 acres of land.
The teachers didn't look like me. I don't recall seeing children look like me.
They said, can we have that land back? He said, no, sir. I think I'm going to keep my land.
I was the first Black teacher in this school.
My parents had raised me to be anything you want to be.
As we share this film with people of all colors, we have shared it in multiple screenings. In the questions or the panel discussions, we are asked, how do we engage? What do we do? How do you act for good without fearing retribution or not knowing if it's the right thing to do? And so we always begin the conversation is step in with empathy and compassion. For Deja, our activist, who's 23 years old, who's probably one of the most well-read and thoughtful individuals, must be an old soul. But she has all kinds of ways of how she wants to act for change, and her way is through protest and activism.
I have been involved with a lot of different protest and educational forums, speak out events that were directly correlated with LGBTQ plus movements, climate change movements, the Women's March that we do here in Salt Lake. And now it's the fall 2020, and the past few months have been very much so the perfect storm.
This is not a riot. This is an uprising.
And in many classrooms where we've presented this film and had a conversation, there are numerous young girls, teenage girls, that say, I want to be Deja. If she can do it, I can do it, which is true.
I guess the resolution to all of this is as simple, but it is complex. Embracing the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that is simply said, but it is so difficult to do. But it is what needs to happen. And it boils down to love. Loving somebody else as you love yourself, which basically is what the beloved community is all about. Love someone else the way you love yourself. Even if you don't know them, even if they do things that you don't like, you have to love them. You have to lead with love. That is what King's life boils down to. Love. And only love can conquer hate. Only light can illuminate the dark spaces.
So we found a group of dancers of color, primarily Black, and when we sat down in rehearsals and we were talking about it, they shared their stories that came out through movement. There is one dancer who says, I cannot be quiet. I cannot be quiet. When I am moving, I'm asking you, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I will not be quiet. Something that we want to share is, in recent times, I attended a conference around climate issues. And what has really been coming up is Marion and I have been working on Black social change in all iterations. We're on year 8. And through this, it has been an honor and a privilege to become close friends with Marion and others. And one thing that really showed up in this conference is that climate justice is intertwined with racial and social justice. And there were very few examples of a white person or a white community working with a person of color or a community of color. But there are very few examples of how people like Marion and me come together. And in our conversations and in our work, we really understand that perhaps we are a living example of the beloved community.
From my perspective, for real change to happen in America, we've got to have allies. And so we are encouraging white America to work for change, to look at those who have less, not as your enemy, not as a drain on society, but as a possibility that can be nurtured through love. Love can change the world.